Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sons of Sequoia podcast.
Hi, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Today is March 23rd, 2021, and it is Tuesday, so you know what that means.
Oh, Movie Tuesday, and we watched a good one.
We did watch,
Actually, we watched two.
we watched two good ones, and the combination of the two made it great. But yes,
Yeah.
today is, in fact, Movie Tuesday, so I think I should play the theme song, don't you?
Yeah.
I haven't
I
done
think
that
you
in a
should.
couple weeks, but here we go. Here's the Movie Tuesday theme song. It's time for Movie Tuesday. All right, it's time for Movie Tuesday. We saw two movies. One is nominated for the Academy Award for Best Short Film. It's called Feeling Through. And the other was a documentary about the making of the film that's nominated for Academy Award called Connecting the Dots. Now, I'm going to give a brief plot synopsis of Feeling Through just so people are oriented, and then we can watch the trailer. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, Feeling Through is the story of a young black kid who looks like to be as if he's newly homeless. In his text message conversations with his friends, he's looking for a place to crash, whether it's with a friend or a girlfriend. He goes out and hangs out with his friends, and they all go home, and he's sort of left holding the bag, and he's scrambling for a place to stay. As he's walking around the streets of New York City, he comes across a man who's holding a sign that says, "I am blind and deaf. Please tap me on the shoulder to help me cross the street." He decides to be helpful. And he and the blind and deaf man go on an adventure. He has to take the blind and deaf man to a bus stop, and then the guy gets thirsty, and so they go to a bodega. And so there's some plot elements of his honesty and his courage, but I won't want to spoil the whole movie. It ends up with them becoming friends, and the young man gets the blind and deaf guy onto the bus, and he makes sure that the bus driver drops him off at his stop, to make sure that the bus driver promises to drop him off at his stop, and then they share a hug, and that's the end of the Feeling Through. And it was fine. I liked it. I thought it was good. It was a heartwarming story, but then we watched Connect the Dots. And what did we learn when we watched Connecting the Dots? That is the
Well,
documentary about Feeling Through.
right. The Connect the Dots was explaining the actors and how they did it, why they did it, the backstory, and that was as compelling, if not more heartwarming, to me than the movie, and it made the movie come alive because it's kind of like when you know something really deeply and intimately, or you live it and you see it, you can see bits and pieces of it. And we didn't watch the movie again, but when we watched how it was made and the actors that made it, and we saw them, we began to realize how impactful that movie is, not just to the viewers, but as much to the actors and the director and the writer and
Mm-hmm.
everybody as it was to us that saw it. So it's not just, I will say, it's not just another short movie.
Yes. So should we watch the trailer real quick?
Yes, it's much more. Yeah, let's watch it.
Okay, I'll have our reactions on the side here.
Excuse me, miss, you have a swipe?
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10.
You never seen a blind and deaf guy before?
There it was, the trailer But
Yeah.
when we watched it, and we watched it with my sister Laura, and she said the exact same thing I was thinking after we watched Connecting the Dots, the story of Feeling Through. I did like the movie. I thought it was a good short film, but I liked the documentary about the movie more. And so Doug Rowland, the documentary starts and he says, yeah, I was inspired to make this film when late at night in New York about 5 years ago, I came across this guy and he's holding a sign that said, I am blind and deaf. And so the catalyst, the catalyzing event of the film actually happened to the director. And he's like, so I helped the guy get to his bus and we bonded and then he got on the bus and I never saw him again. But I was always reminded of this thing that happened to me. So of course he adds some dramatic elements for the film, but it's based on something that happened to him. And then instead of just casting anyone he wanted to get to play the role of the blind deaf guy, Artie, he went to the Helen Keller Center for, teaching blind and deaf people, and he found a guy that was deaf and legally blind to play the character of the guy that he met. And so this guy was over the moon. He's like, I was born deaf, but I could see, but I always wanted to be an actor, but then I lost my vision and I'm legally blind. I basically see through a pinhole. And I thought, who's going to hire a blind and deaf guy? But Robert, the director, did, and he became the first blind deaf man to star in an Academy Award nominated movie. And I think that's really cool.
The director was Doug.
Doug.
Robert was the young guy, and the young kid was great.
No,
he was
Robert,
really good.
Robert was the blind deaf guy.
I mean the blind deaf guy, Stephen. Yeah, Robert. But the director was Doug Rowland, and Doug Rowland was telling the story, and it was very the connecting the dots, the documentary of how it was made.
Mm-hmm.
You gave a really good introduction, David. That was super. That made the story come alive. There was more to the story too, because he couldn't find the
real Artie.
The real Artie. He couldn't find the real Artie, so they went and found Robert Tarango, and he was ecstatic. And so in the documentary, in Connecting the Dots, it was as much fun to see how excited Robert was. He was just beside himself. He was smiling and animated, and he was so happy. And after a while, you were happy with him because he was going to be in a movie. He was an actor, and he always wanted to do that. But he thought, no one's going to ever. How could a blind and deaf guy ever be in a movie? And but he was just beside himself, literally almost beside himself, just so happy. That made the Connecting the Dots so much better. And then when you think of the movie you just saw, and it was only how long was it? 10, 12, 13 minutes, something like that?
20 minutes. It was 18 minutes, and then the documentary was 24. So I thought the documentary was longer and better than the actual movie. But I will say this. Seeing the documentary and seeing the story of the Helen Keller Center, of how this actually happened to Doug, and he said, I want to make a movie about this, but then instead of just sort of casting his buddies or people that he knows that are actors in New York City, he goes to the Helen Keller Center and he says, I want someone who's blind and deaf to play the role of Artie. And he had these auditions, and when they found Robert, and Robert was very good, but Robert was like the perfect match to play the role of Artie. And they couldn't actually find the actual Artie, but they looked for him for the whole duration of the documentary. And at the end, he does come and see Artie, and he tells Artie, Artemo, is that his name? He's and he tells him, we're making a movie about our experience that we had together 5 years ago, and Artemo remembers him. And then they talk to Artie, the real Artie, and he says, yeah, it's cool that Doug's making this movie, and I think maybe I want to be an actor too.
He did. And actually, he was Spanish speaking, so he had to have an interpreter. But
no,
actually,
his mom had an interpreter. It seemed like
his
Artie
mom had an interpreter.
Yeah. It seemed like Artie spoke English.
Right. But even at that, his mom and then the real Artie, they just had a connection. It was very, very touching. The real story was touching,
Yeah, the real story was touching, and the movie was touching.
and the movie was touching. So the movie told a story, and and uh, uh, the I think the exciting thing about that was it really had, I think it did covered a lot of ground uh, with deaf and blind people, because you see deaf people but you don't see deaf and blind. You can't imagine what it'd be like to be deaf and blind
Mm-hmm.
and then try to communicate. And Artie and Tariq, he was the young kid. Well, he wasn't that young, but the younger man, uh, they became friends, and so it was very good. It was I was surprised, and like Laura said, the documentary made the movie even better.
Yes. So once you get the context, that it's not just this guy is like, oh, I have this idea for a movie. It actually happened to him. And then he said,
Yeah.
I want to make a movie about it. But instead of saying, I'm just going to get some actors from Central Casting, I'll get some actor from Central Casting to play Artie. He said, no, I'm going to go to the Helen Keller Center. I'm sort of going to learn about this world. And then it seemed to me like Artie was working as a dishwasher at the Helen Keller Center.
Uh-huh.
Did you get that
Oh yeah.
impression? And he's like,
Oh, he
well,
was.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was technically the Helen Keller Center. It might have been across the street or whatever, or
Yeah, yeah.
But Artie's working, and he's like, I don't know if I can get off work. And then the guy's like, we're going to let you off work to star in this movie. Not Robert, the guy that played Artie. It's difficult
Yeah.
because Artie is also a real person in connecting the dots.
Yeah.
So Artie is a real person, but Artie is also played by Robert in the short film. So the names get confusing, but he's like, I don't know, I got to get off work. They're like, we're going to let you get off work to star in this movie.
Don't worry about that, Robert.
Yeah. But you're right. He was very charming. The guy Robert that played Artie, when he was interviewed, it was his enthusiasm, and he's a very expressive guy, so he was a good choice to play the actor, and he did a great job in the role. And then you see, like, no deafblind person has ever starred in a movie that's been nominated for an Oscar, and it's like, that's cool. I mean, that is very cool to me. And I don't know anything about that world.
No. Are you and I still up on being broadcast?
Yeah, I'm broadcasting our two up. I just forgot to unshare the screen.
That's what I thought. Yeah, when you think of that, you think, well, Robert did a great job. It was very good. And in the Connecting the Dots documentary, when you look at it, you begin to realize how difficult that would be.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about making a film, the director, do this, do this, do this, do this, do it again, oh yeah, let's take this thing in there. You have to do that to a deaf and blind person, and Robert was all in, and Robert was excellent. He was very good, but still he was part of a movie of the camera, the director, the other actor, Stephen Prescott was Tariq. So they had to work together, and it was and also Stephen Prescott was Tariq, the kid. He seemed like he totally bought into this. He was excellent. He was so good, and all of them wanted this to happen, and they had the barrier of blind and deaf, but after a while, it seemed like initially it was a barrier because they're used to talking to sight people who could hear and talk, but after a while, they shifted to another mode to say, "Hey, this is how we're doing this," and they started moving, and they created a really good movie, a short movie. It's well worth seeing. It was well done, wasn't it, David?
It was well done. I would say, though, if you're going to watch it, don't just spend the 20 minutes watching the movie. Watch the documentary afterward.
Yeah. Yeah. It's worth it. It's worth watching the movie, then the documentary. So we did it. We didn't plan on doing it that way. It was just, well, there's the documentary connection. Let's watch that. It was okay. But we're so glad we did, because they come as a pair. Because the message the message in the movie to me was first was yes, it really was a good story, but the overarching message was this is really a blind and deaf person, and he really did make this movie for the first one ever, and so that opens up this door to all of the blind and deaf people or other people who get looked over. Their talent, their enthusiasm, their energy gets looked over because of a few things that they can't do like you do it. It's not. I don't want to say. I don't like the word handicap because they just do it differently, and I think you should look at the value and the energy and the excitement of people. Just because they do it a little bit differently doesn't mean it's wrong. You can get value out of everybody, and that to me that was the overarching message of this short film.
I did like in the documentary they're talking about how if you can't see and you can't hear, one thing that's crazy is your desire to communicate is no less than anyone else's. Perhaps your ability to communicate is less because everyone else has a different paradigm of how they communicate.
Right.
But you still want to be a part of this world. You know, you still want to meet people and go out there and do things and live your life. And I think that often gets sort of dismissed when someone, maybe, I don't know, but it makes you think about these issues, because I don't want to speak for like the deaf blind community because I saw one 20-minute film and now I'm an expert. But I'm sure that managing the fact that this person is deaf and blind, if you're their caretaker or their parents or whatever, becomes, you know, a dominant feature of their caretaker's life and the person who's deaf and blind's life. But that does not mean that the person who is deaf and blind doesn't have all of the faculties of a regular person. They just want to be out there in the world, communicating with people, making friends, you know, forging relationships, having a career, going forward, doing the things that make people people. It's just that they're trying to do it without the ability to see or hear.
Well, my background, my experience is that everybody has challenges. No one's perfect, and when you see someone, when you're around people or when you're around everybody, no matter who they are, everyone is going to see things differently. They're going to do things differently. They're going to need to be done differently, and so when you have something that is a barrier to one way of doing it, you could call it a barrier, but that could be an opportunity to find another way to live your life, another way to communicate, another way to find happiness, another way to see the value in a person. And it's like instead of trying to live with a disability, see it as an opportunity, or it could be a way to learn different things about yourself and learn different things about other people. Other people have the ability to see the value of a person, just like Doug did. Doug saw, whoa, this really changed his life.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to communicate that, and he didn't want to do it with a sighted person. He wanted to do it with a deaf and blind person, and he found one. And look at the door that opened up. So that was an opportunity. We saw something bigger and bigger and greater than we would never would have seen if it was just. The story wasn't that. The story was good. You know, feeling through was good. But the deeper value is how that was made.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he made the movie, it's interesting to me because sometimes artists, they care about their process more than they care about the work of art that they make. So they want people to know that they've suffered to create a work of art more than that the work of art is beautiful. But in this instance, I do feel like, he could have made a documentary about the deafblind community, and it wouldn't have been as impactful if he hadn't have made the movie with an actor from the deafblind community. So the process of making the art is what made the documentary compelling. If he had never made a movie and he just went in there and be like, this is what a deafblind person's life is like, it's like, no, I want to make a movie where the main character is deafblind, and I'm going to cast a deafblind man to play him. And that whole rigmarole is what's important. And it's interesting to me because I was listening to Hidden Brain the other day. I like that show. And they were talking about how young kids, they'll be given stories like Aesop's Fables or, cartoons. And there's a blue elephant and then there's 3 gray elephants. And they're mean to the blue elephant because he's not the right color. And then at the end, there's some sort of lesson. They learn a lesson that all elephants should be treated equal. And then they'll ask the kids, like, what's the moral of the story? And kids, they're not able to see deeper meanings. Like, they often miss the meaning of things like Aesop's Fables or children's shows. They'll say, oh, don't be mean to blue elephants. That's the moral of the story. And it's like, no, it's if someone's different, you should still accept, But this really was about the deafblind community. It wasn't some allegory for something else. It truly was about what it was about. And so I like to try to look through things like, what's the deeper meaning of this? What's he trying to say? And it's like, what he's trying to say is that deafblind people have a place in this world. And you didn't know about it, but I'm showing it to you. And that's very concrete. But it's also, I think it's important. It's good work to do.
Yeah. Totally agree with you, David. That's exactly what I see that too. And I guess for me, when I look at that, I would say exactly what you said, but I'd go deeper in saying that the broader implication is that no matter who people are, or how difficult it is to communicate with them, they have beauty and they have value, and you have to find that. And sometimes it's harder to find than other times, but it's there, and it's worth the effort, and it's worth the change. And if you change, you're going to be a better person for it.
Yes.
And so this disability causes a barrier, but if you learn how to get around that barrier, you're a better person for it. And so why can't you see that is an opportunity to become a better person, better society? I think the more we embrace and see the value in everybody, whatever barriers there are, sometimes the barrier is on our side, not their side. They can communicate. We can't communicate with them, but they're trying to communicate with us. So we have to learn. I think the message is deeper, and I learned that when I was young. When I was younger, I remember I was in a situation. I don't know if I told you this before, but I was in a situation where I was a leader of something. I don't want to tell too many details, but I was a leader of something, and everybody was complaining about what I was doing. They were undermining it. They says, "This is not right. You shouldn't be doing it that way." He says, "I'm just trying to do good. I'm just trying to help people." He says, "Yeah, but you're not doing it the right way." And they were just all negative. And so after that meeting, I got up and I was going to walk out, and a young girl came up to me, and she had Down syndrome, and she said, "I have a gift for you." She had bought this. Her family bought her this little thing where you can weave it, and it was a little clown. It wasn't perfect. And she said, "I want to give this to you." because I like what you're doing. It changed me.
It made a big difference. It gave you perspective.
Yeah. I would never. To this day, I'm different. Every person has value. Never discount a person. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, it goes to show that people can make a huge impact in your life regardless of who they are.
Okay, well, that was, how long ago was that? 40 years ago?
That was in the late
45,
70s.
was back in the 70s, 45 years ago. That was a long time ago.
Was it with your church?
Yeah.
But you still remember it to this day.
I was never the same after that. I don't care who they were. You know, everybody to me, I wonder what value they have to give.
Mm-hmm.
It's not saying I don't want to be around that person. It's like, I wonder what value they have to give.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you say handicapped people, I don't know what people think when they see and think of handicapped people. But I think, I wonder what value that they have to give us that we're missing.
Mm-hmm.
And we are the one that are missing it. Because that barrier is our barrier as much as theirs. Can we get around this?
Mm-hmm.
I guess another one, of course, this is blind and deaf. And you know the Columbine shooting?
Yes.
And I'm not going to say her name, but I had this one student in my class who was shot, and she was in a wheelchair, and she was young, and she just went back to school, you know. And I talked to her one day, and not even about her. She was in a wheelchair. She was paralyzed, but we were talking, and we brought it up. We brought it up and she told me. And she brought it out. She says, yeah, I was shot at Columbine and I was paralyzed. And I just mentioned, yeah, well, I'm really sorry about that. But I'm impressed and that you were here getting education, moving forward. And she says, yes, I can't change the past and what happened to me and where I'm at, but I can sure change the future. And that's what I'm doing. And so many times we live in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The past brings us to where we are with our experiences, but what are we going to do with them? Don't live in the past. Say, how can I move forward? And I think what Doug did to the blind and deaf, to me, the message is much bigger and deeper, maybe because of my experiences, that yes, that all of us have an opportunity to see value and beauty in this world from everybody, no matter who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't see that, it's on us.
Yeah.
It's not on them. So wake up, people, and smell the roses and see the beauty. Sorry about that, David.
That's okay. It's a good point. You know, you never know how people will affect you or who will affect you, and it might not be someone with a disability. It might be someone who is a curmudgeon and that's very unfriendly, and you're the only person who reaches out because no one wants to deal with them because they're a pain in the ass. But then
That's
you
right.
have an experience with them that's life-changing because they recognize what you do. They see you. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical or cognitive disability. It could be just about anything in this world. If you keep yourself open to communication and forging relationships, interesting and powerful things will happen.
Well, if you have eyes, let them see. Let them see not just the outside of people, but the inside of people. Yeah, there are barriers. Like you say, a curmudgeon.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a curmudgeon, yeah, well, why? So a lot of times there's reasons why. And if you can get behind that reason why, you might have a person behind there that's very unusual.
Yes.
It's very good. That has a lot of things to give. And that has happened more than once.
Mm-hmm.
To a lot of people.
And that story's been told in cinema as well. Like a story like, I don't know, Gran Torino or something.
Yeah.
Walt's an old widower and he's racist, but he befriends these kids and he defends them, and you see that there's more to him than just his crotchety racist nature.
Yeah.
But
That's just what.
yeah. So
And he didn't change.
no, he didn't change.
He didn't change. He was who he was. But he saw the good in these kids, and he saw the bad in other kids, and that's just what it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same with feeling through. The little Tariq,
The kid.
sighted, the sighted younger person. He saw the blind and deaf, which was Artie, the actor. I mean the character Artie. He saw it, and he didn't have to go over there. He didn't have to go over there because the blind and deaf person didn't seek him out. And he chose to go over there and read it and touch him
Mm-hmm.
and help him. And then like you said, he was going to help him find the bus. But we don't want to spoil it for everyone. But then he said, "I'm thirsty. I want to get a drink. Take me to the store." You go, "What?" Okay, he did. And in the store, he got a drink for him, and then he sat down, and then he reached in and pulled out a drink out of his backpack, and they started laughing. He had a drink. They started laughing, so they bonded.
It's like my friend Kevin. Will you take me to my doctor's appointment? Next thing you know, we're at Big Five Sports. He's got a rifle in his hand. He's looking through the sights. It's like, how the hell did this happen?
Take me here. Take me here. Take me here.
Uh-huh.
You go, what is this? What is this? But then, it's again, some people, so you can bond with some people, and some people you can't bond with.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, try.
Yeah. And I think before we end this episode, I want to say one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we talking about this movie? And this is off subject of disabled people or, the deafblind community or whatever. We're talking about this movie for the sole fact that it is one of the few Oscar-nominated short films that we could find on YouTube. It's on the Amuleto channel, and then the Connecting the Dots is on the Feeling Through channel. And it's interesting that this is on the Amuleto channel, and it's not, the title of the video is not Feeling Through. And I think that they do this for a search engine. A homeless man, a teen, meets a deaf-blind man at a bus stop who... So I think that these words, they're trying to drag you in with the description of the movie. They don't just say Feeling Through movie, They're trying to... Because this Amuleto channel is huge. But it's the same reason, if we look over here in the right-hand column, that we saw A Concerto as a Conversation. You see above your head. Because it's on YouTube. And I think, honestly, I don't know the economics of short film making, but I know the economics aren't great. Well, I think that having your short film accessible to everyone, regardless of what they're subscribed to. It's not on HBO Max. It's not on Netflix. It's not on Prime Video. It's not on Hulu. It's on YouTube. anyone, whether or not they even have a YouTube account, can watch your short film. I think there's some value to that, into getting your film out into the world. Because if this were on HBO Max or some streaming service we didn't have, we would never have watched it and we wouldn't be talking about it.
Very good point, David. Very good point. You have a story to tell. Tell it. Try to get it to as many people as you can.
Now, I understand, though, if Netflix says, we'll give you $500,000 to make this movie, but it has to be exclusive to Netflix. At that point, it's like, sure. But if you're financing this with, financiers, and I don't think that people finance short films thinking that it's going to be the next Amazon. If you're getting someone to write you a check for $20,000 to make your short film, I don't think they think they're going to make $1 million. They think, I'm contributing to the arts. You see what I'm saying? It's not an it's not an investment. You're investing in the arts, and the art is what is your return, not money. A short film's never going to go like gangbusters.
Right.
It's not like the Marvel movies or something.
But the short films have a different kind of impact than full-length films. Maybe not at the box office, but in society, because it's art. And maybe there should be, to your point, David, maybe there should be some kind of foundation out there to start supporting short films.
Mm-hmm.
Because the short films conversation the short films we've seen were awesome.
Mm-hmm.
They're impactful. They can meet more people if they had some mechanism and support to be distributed to everyone. People will watch them if they're available. I don't know. Maybe there should be some kind of foundation to raise money for the arts for short films as an art a way. What am I trying to say? An art
like a grant program or something.
Well, an
endowment.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking a way to express the art. It's connecting the art with people. It's some way to connect. That's the reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to make money. It's to better society by connecting this art form with people. And this art form is just as valuable, just as important, and it's different than a full-length movie. It's not the same. I think it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
Focusing on a short story and the impact of the story. You're not trying to develop a character. You're not trying to develop a theme of this. It's a short story. It's saying it's like a poem instead of a novel.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there should be more support for that art form.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some support out there. I mean, I bet you Doug, whatever his name is, Doug Rowland, the director of this movie, he had to have $100K somewhere to make this movie. I mean, movies don't make themselves, and he had a crew, he had lights, he had a cinematographer, he had casting. I mean, I'm sure that Tariq, the guy that played Tariq, Stephen Prescott, he got paid, Robert got paid. So I think that when it's all said and done, yeah, you can make a 20-minute film. On the streets of New York City, you have to pay. You can't film on the streets of New York City without paying the city. Now, they may have given him a break, because he's an independent short filmmaker and not a feature film. If Warner Brothers wants to film in the streets of New York City, they're paying the $20,000 a day or whatever. But I mean, it does take resources, and somehow Doug got these resources. So the resources do exist. It's not like there's no organization out there that'll fund short films. I think that a lot of it is based upon, I'm sure that Doug Rowland had this idea, and he pitched it, and people liked it, and he was able to get funding, and he was able to make his movie. And I think that a pull system of let's have an organization and pitch us your ideas. You might get great ideas, but you won't get people that are willing to see it through. And I think to Doug Rowland's credit, he said, I'm going to make this film. And then he did make the film. And then he did make the documentary about making the film, which And I mentioned this last night. Here it is, Connecting the Dots, the story of Feeling Through. I mentioned this last night. I liked Connecting the Dots as a documentary short better than A Love Song for Latasha on Netflix that we saw.
It was easier to follow. But the thing of it is Doug made 2 short films.
Mm-hmm.
He made one, Feeling Through, which is a story. The other's Connecting the Dots, was a documentary. He made 2 of them,
Mm-hmm.
and both of them are valuable. Think of it. If you just saw Connecting the Dots, the documentary, without seeing the film, the short film of Feeling Through, would the documentary would have been as impactful?
No.
I don't think so. No. So the product, what was the product? You have a product, and then you have the story around the product. It was a package. It was a package deal, and I think that kind of, because it was the type of, but the concerto, what is it?
A Concerto is a Conversation.
That was kind of a combination of a documentary and a story, but that was excellent. That was excellent.
That's a different category. That's documentary short subject. This was short film. So
Oh.
Feeling Through is what's nominated, and Feeling Through is a fictional film that's dramatized and filmed. A Concerto is a Conversation is best documentary short. So
Okay.
what I'm saying is Connecting the Dots is a documentary short about a short film. But I feel like it was a better documentary short than A Love Song for Latasha, which is nominated for best documentary short.
Oh, okay.
So
Now the story behind was it the
a
song for
love
Leticia?
song for Latasha.
Yeah, the story behind it was compelling. It was very, very good. But the movie itself, you kind of got the story at the end, what was happening, and it was very sad, and it's poignant today. But as far as a movie was concerned, I kind of like Connecting the Dots better too. Maybe because we saw, Feeling Through. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. And I would recommend to anyone that wants to sort of jump into this, it'll take less than an hour of your time. It's shorter than, the 2 films together are shorter than 1 episode of The Crown or whatever show you're binging these days. So if you want to see an Oscar-nominated short film and an incredible documentary about that film, I would recommend that you watch it in that order. You watch Feeling Through, the short film first, and then Connecting the Dots afterwards. And of course, we have, by discussing this, and if someone's this far along in the podcast, in a way, spilled the beans on the most impactful parts, and it will be less of a surprise. Because for me, we watched Feeling Through, and I was like, that was fine. I mean, didn't really shake my world. And then we watched Connecting the Dots, and we found out he worked with the Helen Keller Center. He found a deafblind actor. He cast a deafblind actor. They talked to the deafblind actor, Robert, and he's a cool guy.
It's really cool.
And he is super excited to be able to do this. And his enthusiasm, it shines through on film. You're like, wow, oh, that guy's actually deaf and blind, and he did this role. Wow. And it gives you a whole new appreciation for the film you just saw.
Even Stephen Prescott, the teenager guy, Tariq, he was the other lead.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about Robert.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, he was good. He was not going to give up. I was tired. He was tired, but we were going to do another take, do it again. So he says it was great working with Robert because Robert was gung ho.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And so it was really cool to see the real people that were actually doing this, and it made the story even more impactful. It's kind of like when you hear a story from a stranger, but you hear this a good story, a touching story, but you hear the same touching story from someone that you know. It's much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And the connected the dots, you get to know those people, and it made the story Feeling Through more powerful. It was good.
And I'm taking a look here just before we get going. Like I said, all this stuff requires financing, and it looks like Marley Matlin is an executive producer. And we could see it here in this corner, Feeling Through.
Yeah.
So there were some Hollywood people who, I mean, an executive producer means you find money and you put up money, or you find someone to put up money in your name for. So there were some Hollywood people behind this, and more power to them. And of course, Marlee Matlin she's famous for being an actress, but she's also famous for being deaf. So she has, for this story to be told, I'm sure it's important to her, because it's sort of, I mean, being deaf and blind, and that's so difficult to imagine. And this literally is, I've never seen The Miracle Worker about Helen Keller. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, long time ago. That's really powerful too.
Okay, so I've never seen The Miracle Worker. So this is really the first movie I've ever seen about deaf blindness. So
Yeah,
this is my introduction to this world.
yeah. Who was the person who worked with Helen Keller, the miracle worker? The actual lady. That was a long time ago. That was back when, the 30s or something.
1962, the film came out.
I know, but actually Helen Keller was before.
Anne Sullivan.
Anne Sullivan. Yeah, that was a pioneer. I mean, yeah, the well, the movie, I guess, if it's close to really what happened with Anne Sullivan and Helen Keller, was remarkable. How do you communicate with a blind and deaf someone from birth? How do you do that? And
Well,
that's a good movie. That's a good movie too, but it's a long one. It's a full-length movie.
and that's what people sort of think of when they think of blind and deaf. They think of Helen Keller, and that's, I mean, I think of The Miracle Worker, Helen Keller. But I think it's cool that Doug went to the Helen Keller Center and talked to these people that are experts. And let me just pull myself up real quick. And they showed, they were interviewing potential arties. And they said, yeah, there's a couple ways that the deafblind communicate. There's tactile sign language. So basically you're doing sign language in the hand and they feel it, and it's like you're talking to them. And then there's the way that Tariq communicates with Artie in the film, and the way that Doug communicated with Artie in real life, which is where they hold out their palm and you write on it. And then Artie would write back on a pad and paper. And that seems so laborious. But if you take a movie like The Miracle Worker, or you take a movie like, which I've never seen, but you take a movie like Feeling Through, it comes back to what the guy in the documentary said. It's this desire to communicate. You may be deaf and you may be blind, but your desire to communicate is no less than anyone else's. So yeah, it may be a pain in the butt to do it the way you have to do it, but if you're deaf and blind, that's all you really know. I mean, and what would you be willing to sacrifice to be able to communicate? Or, how much work would you be willing to be able to communicate with other people? You would do what it takes, right?
You would. And if you're a seeing and a hearing person, and you communicate with this person who is blind and deaf, whether you write on the hand, or whether you can do the take, like hi, we can do that, and then all of a sudden you communicate. It's like opening up a window to fresh air, because that person wants to communicate with you.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, boom. So there's a lot to be said about this, and to me, I see the bigger picture of just human potential, human value, that there's value in everyone, and when I watched the movie, I thought it was good, and we started talking about this about an hour ago. I thought, yeah, fine, this is a good one. It was a good movie. I liked it, but now that I get into it, it pulls up all these memories of the people that I've known that were beautiful, beautiful people, but so many people overlooked them because it was too hard to communicate. I'm not going to talk to them. Whoa, wait a minute. You're missing someone who can give you so much stuff when you actually get to know them.
Mm-hmm.
And we need each other, don't we, David?
Uh-huh. So I think,
and we need everyone.
So I think we can close. I'd like to say a few things, and then I'll let you close it off.
Okay.
The first thing I'd like to say is feeling through and connecting the dots. They're both available on YouTube, so there's no reason for anyone who's listening to this not to go out and watch them. It'll take you about 42 minutes total. Now, I think the order you should watch them is watch the short film and then watch the documentary, but I think you should watch them both because they tell a more complete story than either one in isolation. The second takeaway that I have is if you're a short filmmaker, you should put your films on YouTube because then people can see it. They can see it without a subscription. And the third is sometimes a movie about deafblind people doesn't have a deeper meaning. Sometimes it's about deafblind people, and that is good enough because
That's right.
you don't need to search for a deeper hidden meaning. Sometimes the meaning is the meaning, and that is good enough. So is there anything you'd like to say before we get out of here?
Yes, David. The Sons of Sequoia podcast, we want to tell everyone to keep on talking, but listen more than you talk and try to understand what the other person is saying. Bye.